around the mountains and now I gotta hide. Because maybe it's a kidnapper.
In the final hours of October 17th, 2024, Elliot Eastman was still online. He was thousands of miles from the small town in Vermont where his life began. He was sitting inside his home in Cebuco, a coastal municipality in the southern Philippines. To his viewers, this was supposed to be another glimpse into his unusual new life. But by then, Elliot no longer sounded like someone simply chasing adventure. He sounded tired and he sounded unsure. And when someone asked if he was enjoying life in the Philippines, his answer was not simple. He said there were parts he liked and there were parts he didn't. You see, by then, for months, Elliot had been telling people that the place he lived was dangerous. He had called it the red zone. He had spoken about threats. He had said his life was at risk. And still, for some reason, he stayed. Just a short time after that final live stream, 4 armed men arrived at his home. It's rare to find a case that is so well documented by the victim. So let's dissect Elliot's brutal downfall piece by piece and delve into the disturbing evidence together. Here we go. By the way, this is Dark Case and you can call me Jack. I'm realising every time I go to the forest my nose is super blocked up. I just can't do anything about my allergies no matter how many things I try, so I can only apologise. I just want to thank everyone in the Dark Case family, every single one of you for being here. It means really, honestly, so much. And I know that I do always say that, but I'm being genuine. Thank you so much for still showing up. Now for today's silly little question. Do you have any allergies? Because I'm allergic to just being outside. I'm almost certain of it. Just quickly make sure that you're subscribed and all notifications are turned on. But now it's farewell from Forest Jack and back to Studio Jack. Let's get on with the video. Elliot O'Neill Eastman was 26 years old and he came from Hinesburg, Vermont, a quiet town far removed from the place where his name would later appear in international reports. He graduated from Champlain Valley Union High School all the way back in 2016. I can't actually believe that is a decade ago. Years before the abduction, he had already started building an online presence. His YouTube channel began in 2015, and over time it became a record of his life, his travels, and his search for something outside the life he knew. Elliot appeared restless, like he wanted a different kind of life. He wanted experiences that did not look like the same streets, the same lake, and the same familiar feeling of home. That search eventually took him to the Philippines. More specifically, it took him to Cebuco in Zamboanga del Norte. A lot of people moved to different countries, but Cebuco was not a normal tourist destination. It was not like Manila or Cebu. It was not one of the safer expat areas that foreigners usually choose when relocating to the Philippines. Cebuco sits in a region with a long history of security problems, including armed groups, criminal networks, poverty, and past kidnappings. Foreign governments had warned travelers because of risks including crime, civil unrest, and abduction. So from the beginning, Elliot's move was unusual, and it placed him inside a known risk zone. But Elliot did not go there only for content. He had met a local woman named Carisha Jala, and their relationship became one of the anchors of his life in the Philippines. They married in a traditional Muslim ceremony, and Elliot converted to Islam for the occasion. After a brief return to the United States for work, he came back to Cebuco in 2024. By May of that year, he had settled there more permanently. He lived in Sitio Tungawan, Barangay Poblacion. He filmed his daily routine. He showed the shoreline, the local community, his home, and the slower pace of life. To viewers, it could look peaceful, but peace and safety are not the same thing. That contrast became one of the central themes in Elliot's story. On one side, there was the life he wanted to show, a new marriage, a new home, a remote place where he stood out. On the other side, there were warnings, threats, and the reality of a region where local security could not always respond fast enough. Elliot seemed totally aware of this, and he spoke openly about the danger. He described the area as the red zone. He said his life was still at risk while he was there. That creates the first major question in the case. Was Elliot ignoring the danger, or had he simply become used to it? Because when risk becomes part of daily life, it can start to feel normal. And for Elliot, that may have been one of the most dangerous changes of all. As 2024 continued, Elliot's videos began changing in tone. The earlier excitement was still there, but underneath it was a growing tension. He spoke more openly about fear. He talked about danger in ways that no longer sounded hypothetical. And because he uploaded so frequently, viewers were able to watch that shift happen almost in real time. Jack here just quickly, sorry to interrupt the video, but I just want to mention channel memberships. Channel memberships are making a huge difference right now, and currently 278 of you are channel members, and I'm actually aiming for 300 by the end of May. Because with the way YouTube works right now, channel members, you just kind of need them or it doesn't work. Thank you so much, love you all. This is the end of Forest Jack, back to Studio Jack again, and Elliot's story. By 2024, Elliot had posted hundreds of videos documenting his life in Cebuco. That amount of footage is important to this case because it created a detailed public record of his routines, his location, his surroundings, and even his concerns. In several videos, Elliot spoke about people disliking him. He suggested he had received threats. He also described situations where he felt watched. One video posted in early October became especially unsettling after the abduction. Elliot was walking near the shoreline with his wife when he noticed armed men nearby. His tone immediately changed. He pointed out the weapons. He noted how many people were there, and he actually sounded nervous too. What makes moments like that significant is not just the fear itself. It is the fact that Elliot kept documenting these encounters publicly while remaining in the same area. That visibility may have increased his vulnerability. He was not anonymous in Cebuco. He was one of the only foreigners living there long term, and he openly discussed money, projects, and investments online. In one video, Elliot spoke about spending large amounts on equipment, including Starlink internet systems and solar panels. He also discussed helping build a small store connected to his wife's family.
I think total, I built this waiting shed too. That costed like $15,000 just for this waiting shed. And the roof and everything. See, it's pretty nice. I spent 15,000 pesos alone just on this waiting shed, I'm pretty sure. And then on the solar, the Wi-Fi and the solar, I think I spent a total like 130K or something, maybe 120. Yeah, 130K, 130,000 pesos on the solar, the Wi-Fi with solar. Maybe even more now because I just bought another solar panel. Maybe it's getting down like 140,000 pesos. Our inverter just broke the other day too, which was like 5,000 pesos. This yellow one.
Online discussion later focused heavily on another allegation, that Elliot had been lending money locally at high interest rates. This point needs to be handled carefully though, because it's not fully corroborated. But some Reddit users and online commentators claimed he was operating as a loan shark. However, much of this information remains unverified or based on interpretation of his own videos. What can be said factually is that Elliot publicly discussed financial transactions online while living in a high-risk area where foreigners already attracted attention. That combination alone carried risk, especially in a place where criminal groups, personal disputes, and local tensions could escalate quickly. In September 2024, he said directly that the area was the most dangerous area in the country. He actually admitted that his life was at risk. Friends, locals, and officials reportedly warned him to leave, but Elliot stayed, partly because of his relationship, partly because his content depended on being there, and possibly because over time, surviving in that environment made him believe he could continue doing it safely. That process is sometimes called normalization of risk. The more a dangerous situation repeats without immediate consequences, the more normal it can begin to feel, until eventually the warning signs stop functioning as warnings. And by October 2024, there were already many warning signs surrounding Elliot Eastman.
Flowers. Look at these shoes. These shoes are so nice.
Yes.
For climbing.
Up and down the mountains, and now I gotta hide. Because maybe it's a kidnapper.
Ako mag-video ko yan.
Okay.
Or go first. Yan na.
Kidnappers.
Okay.
Here I am. What? No. I wonder what they're doing. Maybe they're spearfishing. They're spearfishing. I think these people are spearfishing. Looks like the guy had a gun. What are they, spearfishing? Are they spearfishing? Huh? Maybe, right? Maybe they're spearfishing. There's like 5 or 6 of them. And they're looking at us, or at me. They're like, they're interested.
On October 17th, 2024, Elliot Eastman went live one final time, and the video was strange. The stream lasted less than many viewers expected, and people watching noticed something different almost immediately. Elliot looked exhausted. He sat on the floor of his home, speaking far less than usual. There were long pauses. His energy was low. At one point, a viewer asked whether he enjoyed living in the Philippines.
Enjoying Philippines. Enjoying it. There's some parts that I like about it, there's some parts that I don't like about it. What don't I like about it? The bathrooms are smelly. They don't smell good. Most of the times. Yeah. I'm just getting tired of like being around all the same people. Yeah.
The stream ended without a dramatic goodbye. No indication that within hours, police would be responding to reports of an armed abduction. Later that night, at around 11 p.m., 4 armed men reportedly arrived at Elliot's home in Sitio Tunggawan, and according to investigators, the men posed as police officers. They were dressed in dark clothing and carried M16 rifles, and what happened next unfolded quickly. Police said Elliot resisted. This detail became central to the later investigation, because investigators believed the struggle changed the outcome of the abduction itself. During the confrontation, Elliot was reportedly struck twice by a firearm. One round reportedly hit his leg. Another struck his abdomen or torso area. Investigators later recovered rifle casings and signs of blood loss from the scene. The attackers then forced Elliot away from the property and toward the shoreline. There they loaded him onto a motorized banker. A banker is a narrow outrigger boat, commonly used throughout the Philippines, by the way. Witnesses reported the boat heading out into the darkness toward the Sulu Sea. Local officers attempted pursuit, but the attackers disappeared into the night. This part of the case created immediate uncertainty for investigators. Normally, kidnappings involving foreigners in the region were associated with ransom demands, but no ransom demand publicly appeared. No proof of life emerged either. That absence changed how investigators interpreted the case. It raised the possibility that the motive may not have been financial in the traditional sense, but at that stage, police still hoped Elliot could be rescued alive. Search operations began almost immediately. Task groups were formed. The FBI and the US Embassy coordinated with Philippine authorities. Coastal areas and nearby islands were searched, and for weeks the case remained suspended between two possibilities. Either Elliot was still alive somewhere in the region, or the abduction had already ended in tragedy before the boat ever reached its destination. In the days after the abduction, investigators treated the case as an active kidnapping. Search teams focused on coastlines, islands, and possible routes through the Sulu Sea. Checkpoints increased across parts of western Mindanao. Police coordinated with military units and maritime patrols. And because the victim was an American citizen, the case quickly gained international attention. The FBI became involved alongside Philippine authorities. But almost immediately, investigators faced a major problem. There was no communication from the abductors, no ransom demand, no proof of life, no negotiation. That silence became one of the most disturbing parts of the case. Historically, kidnappings involving foreigners in parts of Mindanao often involved ransom operations. Foreign nationals could be viewed as high-value targets, but Elliot's case did not follow that pattern publicly. As investigators searched for answers, arrests began to happen quickly. Several suspects were identified by police during late October 2024. Some surrendered. Others were arrested during operations connected to the investigation. Then the case escalated again. In November 2024, authorities tracked several suspects to another area of the Zamboanga Peninsula. A violent encounter followed. 3 men linked to the case were killed during a shootout with police. That development mattered for 2 reasons. First, it suggested investigators were closing in on the network involved. But second, it also meant potential information about Elliot's whereabouts may have died with them. Then came the breakthrough that shifted the entire direction of the investigation. In December 2024, police said they received statements from individuals connected to the suspects. According to investigators, one account came from a relative, another came from a captured participant in the abduction itself. The statements described what police believe happened after Elliot was taken onto the boat. According to those accounts, Elliot's injuries became fatal while the kidnappers held him on the boat. Police believed he passed from the loss of vital fluids caused by the attack with the M16. The suspects allegedly panicked, and according to the statements, they disposed of Elliot's body in the sea. That revelation fundamentally changed the case. Search efforts shifted from rescue to recovery, and on December 5, 2024, Philippine police publicly stated that they were constrained to believe Elliot Eastman had died. But there was still one major complication. No body had been recovered. Without remains, investigators could not provide definitive forensic confirmation. No autopsy could be performed. No exact timeline of his passing could be verified independently. Police acknowledged this openly. They stated that while all available information pointed toward Elliot's death, the lack of a recovered body left a small remaining uncertainty. That uncertainty kept the case suspended in a strange space, officially presumed dead, but physically missing. And because the sea where investigators believed his body was discarded covered such a vast area, recovery efforts became extremely difficult. Strong currents, weather conditions, and the passage of time worked against search teams. Despite dives, patrols, and coastal searches, nothing was ever found. No remains, no clothing, no physical closure for the family. Only statements from suspects describing what they claimed had happened on the boat that night. Even after the arrests, one major question remained unresolved. Why was Elliot Eastman targeted? Police identified suspects and authorities then arrested the alleged mastermind, in January 2025. But the motive itself remained unclear, and into that uncertainty came speculation. Online discussions exploded after the case gained international attention, especially on Reddit and expat forums focused on the Philippines. Some people believed the abduction was financially motivated. Others believed it was personal. Some theorized that Elliot's visibility online made him a target. Others pointed toward local resentment, territorial tensions, or conflict connected to money lending. But much of this remained speculation, and separating fact from theory became increasingly difficult. What is confirmed is that Elliot openly documented nearly every aspect of his life online. His routines, his location, his projects, his fears, his finances, and his frustrations. All of it became public. That level of visibility may have made him unusually exposed in an already unstable environment, especially because Elliot was not hiding in a large city. He was one of the only foreigners living long-term in a remote area, already associated with security concerns. And according to multiple reports, he had been warned repeatedly about the danger. Then, in January 2025, investigators announced another major breakthrough. Police arrested Jakaria Siddiq Jamani, who they identified as the alleged mastermind behind the abduction. He was captured near the Basilan Strait during an operation connected to the case. By that point, several suspects were already dead, several were in custody, and others remained at large. But even with those arrests, major questions still lingered. Why was there no ransom? Was Elliot meant to survive the abduction originally? Did the resistance during the confrontation change the outcome entirely? Or was the operation always intended to end violently? Investigators never fully answered those questions. And because Elliot's body was never recovered, some uncertainty continues to surround the final moments of the case. Today, Elliot's YouTube channel still exists online. Hundreds of videos remain available, and watching them now feels very different than when they were first uploaded. At the time, they looked like travel videos from a man building an unusual life abroad. Now they feel closer to a record of escalating danger. The warnings are difficult to ignore in hindsight. The references to fear, the discussions about threats, the comments about kidnapping, the visible anxiety in the final weeks. And perhaps the most unsettling part is that Elliot himself seemed to understand the risk better than many viewers did. He openly called the area dangerous. He acknowledged his life was at risk. But over time, the danger appears to have become part of normal life. That may be the central tragedy of this case. Not simply that Elliot entered a dangerous place, but that he slowly adapted to the danger around him until leaving no longer seemed necessary. And in the final hours before the abduction, sitting quietly during his last live stream, it almost felt as though that reality had finally caught up with him. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.